Yo, YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy, SalvationsElite. We are back with another video, guys, and today we're doing the way too early, the premature rankings, the power rankings for the Call of Duty League. All 12 teams, we're going to be talking about them, breaking them down on this chart, as you guys can see right here, and we're going to be going down and kind of putting them on this graph in how we feel about them moving into the full-on CDL season. So obviously at this point it's really early on. This is a premature rankings. I'm sure we'll do another power rankings as the season gets closer. We're still over 2 months away from the start of the CDL, the first event in the end of January, so we got a long time to wait. We got to fill the gap somehow. This is just a fun time, and I know you guys are gonna have a lot of differing opinions, so drop them all down below. Be respectful as always. Don't want to hurt my feelings. So with that said, let's get right in the video. Let's go. So also one thing I wanted to say before we actually got started is, like, again, we've only seen online play at this point. I mean, the European teams hadn't even streamed their scrims, and again, they're only scrims. And so at the end of the day, the best teams should be trying to practice and get better in scrims, and winning the scrims isn't as important as getting better throughout the scrims. So they definitely mean something, but they don't mean everything. I know there's been like the standings of all the scrim records so far, but I don't take that too much into account. At the end of the day, we're just gonna go through it and talk about them. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So Toronto has not been great so far. I'm not very excited or impressed. I have some worries, let's just say that, with this squad so far. I mean, they're still trying to figure things out. I know it's not going to be perfect early on when they have that kind of muddied of a roster, and some of the other teams are definitely going through that as well. But when you got like Brack and Methods and Cammy and so many other guys that, you know, they're kind of all in this middling tier of players, it feels like, and they're struggling to kind of get it figured out and sorted out right now. So with that said, I'm going to kind of move them into this area right here. It's not like a complete red alert, get to the bomb shelter thing yet, but it's definitely not looking great for Toronto Ultra right now. So next, let's just snag like the New York subliners. I'm feeling pretty decent about this team right now. They're definitely on the better side of things right now as a squad. They've looked pretty solid. I've been enjoying watching their scrims as a whole when they've been streaming, and they've been pretty good. So, I mean, right now at that roster, I like where they're headed in the direction they're going, but the biggest thing for them is once the season gets going, I'm a little concerned about how they might be able to handle the losses. Early on, Temp and the boys always kind of seem to be looking pretty good, and then when the pressure starts kicking in, there's frustration that arises when the losses start piling up. That's usually when teams that temper on start to go downhill a little bit. So right now I'm feeling good about them, but we'll have to see whether or not they can keep things up going into the rest of the season. They're gonna be right in the middle here. They're gonna put like right here. We'll keep them right there for now. See, maybe they'll move as we get more teams in here, but I'm feeling pretty decent about them so far. So I guess next we can do like the London Royal Ravens. We haven't really seen much from them. Again, they haven't scrimmed. We don't know how they're going to play yet at this point, so we haven't heard too much from them. Based off their roster though, I feel like they're going to be a middle of the pack type team based off how the rest of these teams are performing right now, unless Dylan's an absolute monster. But from the looks of it so far, the guys who dominated on Black Ops 4, it really hasn't translated that well for those guys. I mean, you know, I'm looking at you, OpTic Gaming. The Royal Ravens, at this point, it's hard to put them any higher than the middle of the pack. So I'm going to throw them like kind of right in the middle, and they can definitely move their way up after we start seeing more of them. So this is another team I'm actually really excited about. That's Seattle. Seattle Surge's team is really, really fun, and I like them a lot as a roster. I think as this game keeps moving on, they're going to get pretty comfortable. The only guy I'm a little concerned about right now is Slacked. He hasn't looked great in the scrims. He's been struggling a little bit, seems a little lost at times, so we'll have to see how that goes. But even with that, Seattle's looked pretty good, and I like them even a little bit more than New York right now. So I'm going to move them up even just a little bit higher than New York. I'm going to put them up here somewhere. I like what I'm seeing from Seattle right now. So let's move on to Florida, the Mutineers. This roster's kind of weird still. It's still trying to figure things out. They've played decent at best in scrims. They're kind of in the same spot as Toronto right now. Or I'm not exactly sure what we're getting at this point. At least we have more of like a solid starting five with Florida. I mean, individually, I really like all of the guys on that team when it comes to like Frosty, Havoc, Pristini, Mox, and Skies. Like, as a team, it's a pretty interesting squad, and I like them all individually, which is why I'm going to move them just slightly ahead of Toronto right now. They're definitely not in the red alert zone, which is why I'm going to slot them just slightly below average. I like where they're headed right now, but they still have some work to do for sure. So this Atlanta FaZe squad is really interesting. I like them a lot. They're one of the elite teams moving into the beginning of the CDL season. They've been playing really well, as a squad. I like how they play together. I like their communication. Overall, really like the talent that they have and the vibes that their team puts out. And I think they're going to be a really fun squad. With that said, I'm going to slot them in pretty high up here. We're almost ready to give them the ring, but just not quite yet. So let's talk about the LA Gorillas. So this is, X's squad. I'm definitely worried about this squad. I don't know if they're going to be able to make things happen. Obviously, we haven't seen them scrim yet. I mean, they just announced their roster a few days ago, like officially. I don't know, man. The team doesn't feel like it's built to be a really great squad. I'm worried about it as a whole. And it doesn't feel like there's a lot of potential for them to like really rise above. I don't know, man. I'm not looking forward to this squad early on in the year. Maybe X pulls out some magic and makes something happen as the year moves along. But early on, I am definitely worried about this squad, which is why I'm going to slot them in pretty far down here. They're going to need some major help if they want to have a chance to make something happen the rest of this year for sure. So let's talk about Minnesota. Let's talk about the Rokers. They're a really interesting team to me. I think, again, they're not the sexiest of rosters, but they have a really, really fundamentally nice roster overall. I think the team as a whole can be sneakily good in this game. Like, I know people aren't that high on them like this early on in the year. I mean, at the end of the day, I think they can make some noise. I don't know if they have the end-all be-all firepower to be like a top 5 team, which is why we're going to slot them right in the middle with London. So we got some interesting teams to still talk about. I've held some of the more interesting ones till the end here. But let's just kick it off with the Huntsman. The Chicago Huntsmen have looked really, really good. Hex and his boys have looked really, really nice. I know the branding's gotten some flack personally. I really like it a lot. And I'm excited to see what this roster can do early on in this year. I think they're going to be really, really good. It's been interesting to see their transformation from the beginning of the scrims to the end. They started off kind of rough, but they've been pretty good these last few days. Now that teams are starting to get a hang of hardpoint, I think this team's looking really, really dangerous. They are right up here with FaZe. I'm even going to move them slightly ahead of FaZe, actually, because I think the Huntsmen just have so much firepower on this team and are going to be really, really dangerous early on in this year. So let's talk about Paris. Paris CoD is going to be in some major trouble this year. I know we haven't actually seen them, but this roster just isn't cutting it for me. I don't think it's going to be very good at all. I'm going to move them into the needs major help category back here at the end. Someone's going to have to really break out and make a name for themselves this year if they're going to want to be outside the bottom 3 probably. Oh, the last 2, OpTic Gaming and Dallas Empire. All right, so there's been some drama. There's been the whole Crim versus the Young Guns thing. Crim's been posting on his YouTube channel, trashing on OpTic because it hasn't been going very great for OpTic. So with that said, let's talk about the boys in green. Let's talk about the green wall. OpTic, they need some help. And it's crazy with the amount of talent that they have on that team that they're not incredible right off the rip. When you've got the talent and the experience that those guys have in LA, you'd expect more, but like, man, they have looked really, really bad. The good teams have been absolutely trashing them. They've looked discombobulated as a squad. They don't know how to run these maps. They don't seem to have the strats at all. Like, you'd think with Slasher and JCap on the squad, they'd be able to make something happen. And with Kenny and Dashy were fantastic in World War II, so you'd think it would have translated pretty well to this, where they'd have a good understanding of the game and everything else. All of the things considered, OpTic looked really, really bad. I think they have what it takes to still be a fantastic elite squad. I mean, the talent itself is just telling. Maybe by the middle of the season, they might be able to rebound and get a lot better. But early on, right now where we are, when we're doing these power rankings, you cannot put them inside the top half, and they need some major helps. I mean, we're going to move them down here and probably hanging out with like Toronto, needing some major help. I'm going to move them slightly above because I think they have a little bit more potential than Toronto right now to kind of rebound more quickly than Toronto does, but they need some major help. Last up is Dallas Empire, and they're right near the top here. They're right in the midst of Atlanta, the Huntsman, but in my mind, they're currently the best team in Call of Duty. I'm going to move them just slightly ahead of both of them. I would say it's really close. Both Dallas Empire, Chicago Huntsman, and Atlanta FaZe can all be elite teams together as one. And if we were doing like a tiers list, they'd probably all be in the same tier potentially. But all 3 of these teams are really, really good. I have Dallas kind of slightly edging them out right now as the #1 team. But that could easily change in the coming weeks before we get into the first event. Dallas Empire is a nice team right now. They've looked really good in Search especially, and look solid in Hardpoint. But overall, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you guys really enjoy it. I always do appreciate you guys, showing the support on Twitter, on Instagram, here on YouTube, in the comments and everything else. But as always, guys, I'm your boy SalvationsElite, and we'll see you next time. I'm out.